All right, let's talk about human behavior and our minds. So, as we've been talking about how to find truth, learn truth, etc. Now, one of the biggest, most important things in doing that is you have to recognize the tool you're using to learn about truth, right? Your mind. I've done a lot of research into psychology and just what everyone thinks about as far as how your mind operates. And man, is it Pan's Labyrinth. This thing that we have right in between our ears, it's one of the most confusing things, yet in many ways it's very simple. It's elusive. That's usually what elusive things are, is simple. So we have this piece of hardware that lets us navigate reality. And if we use it correctly, we can discover amazing things that will benefit us. Also, we can be plagued by this thing that's between our ears and ruin our lives. It's really almost where we exist. I think there was a scientist, I don't remember his name, but he said that basically we are these giant meat machines transporting around a antenna, receiving information and creating another universe inside of a box, which is our minds. Kind of a silly thing that he came up with. But outside of that, you've got to start with looking at what is our minds. Well, it is a series of sections. Some people say you got amygdala, hippocampus, cerebral cortex, tons of things. Like, your brain is thought of as this thing that actually is developed over time. If you believe in evolution, you would say that your hindbrain is the older part, the deeper part of your brain. And it has some simpler processes, and it has functions that are necessary to survival, but maybe not totally adapted to the time that we're in now. Whereas as you move up, there's newer parts of your brain that are more useful, where language begins to develop, and where we have now are conscious minds, where we'll be able to have conversations like we are now, remember things and put them into some type of narrative where we're able to, you know, create a structured life, not just survive based off of, cause and effect, reactions to nature and the elements. So, for those of you who are fairly, aware of this stuff, you may say that that's all very obvious. Now, here are the key aspects of the mind that I've came across in my time that even psychologists don't seem to address enough or even understand, that have bothered me significantly. So, one of the first things you have to understand is that your mind really is, in a lot of ways, blind. Your mind is this information center that is in another reality. It's highly cut off from everything, which sounds very funny because you exist in a world and you would think you are a part of it. But in many ways, your mind is just a reflection of the world that you exist in. It's painting a picture of what reality really is based off what's described to it. So to start with, they say you have five senses: touch, taste, smell, hearing. Um, what's the other one? Touch, taste, smell, hear. Oh, and sight. Duh. So anyway, some people say there's more. That's another topic. But that all being said, you have these five senses, which you could say are really, in essence, antenna. Now, if you ever have studied any type of signal or radio technologies, things like that, you realize that really just most antenna are just an object that's sending out a signal and then waiting for it to bounce back and to reconstruct the pattern that it is received into an image or a sound or whatever, so that you can then create a copy of what really is. So this is interesting because it goes for smell, which is really just collecting particles of objects, right? And then you are taking samples and you have a library in your mind based off of past experiences where then you end up, identifying each through experience. Some of it is actually um, RNA information that is in your subconscious and programmed into your DNA that you have ancestral memory of different smells, like methane or feces. But anyway, you have also sounds, etc. Your mind is an information center storing patterns from antenna that are on your body. And what you have to realize understanding this is that what you're feeling, tasting, seeing, hearing, all of these things, right? They're just rough sketches of reality that you see around you. They're like shorthand versions of what's really happening. And what's cool is these antennas you have, your five senses, are actually highly perceptive. They're bringing in tons of information, assuming you have the standard faculties that a human would have when they are born, what is baseline. Now, that all being said, something to consider when it comes to this in reference to the mind, all of those signals that you are receiving when you are experiencing the world are in the past. Now, what does that mean? That means that everything you see, hear, touch, taste, etc., is on a time delay. When you see something, you are seeing something that happened back in time. You're not living in the present truly because there is a time delay for the speed of light. Now, if let's look at that tree behind me, one of them, I have to have my eye antennas sitting still and light from the sun comes down, hits that tree, and once it hits the tree, it scatters in all directions, but then some of it comes all the way over and hits my eye. And then from my eye, it is throwing through my nervous system and then finally reaching a segment of my brain where I can actually register a pattern of light waves, etc. And then from there, my reticular activation system is going to filter out to be able to understand it's a tree. Now, that sounds like a lot, and really that's happening in fractions of a millisecond. But nonetheless, your mind is only interpreting things that already happened. So if you live in this world, you have to understand you don't live in the present. The present is only found within, not without. You cannot experience anything that is truly happening in time. So, we, in a way, really truly are in our own separate, segregated universe or existence. One where we are collecting a story that is really a copy of what's really going on. Now, this understanding that we are in a different timeline in our consciousness is important because it has us relate to reality differently than if we were truly present. We are cut off. We are external to reality because of that. We are not truly a part in that way of what is happening. We can then return an effect, a signal back, which then has a cause and effect on reality externally of us. But that's the only way. And it's like sending Morse code back and forth. You never truly control anything. You simply affect it, right? All right. So this is a rough cover of one aspect of the mind I don't hear spoken about often. The next is reticular activation system, right? RAS. This is one of the most important aspects of the mind I have ever learned about. It is fundamental in shaping how I have understood the universe, my life, the world, etc. And it's very simple in that it is this. These five senses you have, plus whatever else you may have, are pulling in a large amount of information. There's some estimates on how much information is actually being pulled in through your five senses in bits and bytes. Depends on who you ask. It's a little hard to quantify, but roughly it is something between like 2 million to 200 million bits of information per second you're receiving through your five senses. Now that is a lot, right? And here's the problem. Your brain cannot process all of that information, specifically your newer section of your brain, your frontal lobe, right? You are not capable of processing everything your five senses are able to pick up. Now, why is that? Why? So, here's one thing. With your frontal lobe, you live in a form of abstraction or linear thought associated with language. Okay? Now, when you think in a conscious form, in a language labeling system, you are really capped off at the speed that you can talk. Okay? So, what that means is when you're processing information in a very detailed way, if you have an inner monologue, you can only think about the things you're thinking about at the speed of which a human can naturally speak. You can check me on this, look it up. It sounds a little ridiculous, but basically it's something like 400 words a minute. So that's one aspect of this. There's other aspects. But because of that, and you have all this information coming in, and I know that we talked about five senses, and speaking seems to only relate to one. But what's happening is you have to filter out information to be able to make enough sense of anything to what's relevant. And a lot of this has to do with caloric preservation and just efficiently using the resources you have to make decisions on things that aren't important. Now, I can prove to you that this particular activation system is very real and very powerful. Now, if you were, like, for example, driving down the road, and as a passenger, let's say, you are observing the scenery around you as you drove by. Maybe you see trees, you see buildings, the road, other cars, etc. Right? As you're driving by and you notice all these things, can you remember all the numbers on all the license plates of the cars as you drive by? Probably not. That would be very impressive. If it was just something you weren't necessarily paying attention to and it got absorbed in and you could somehow remember, that would be impressive. But the point is, when you're looking at your car, you're looking out for a generalized set of information that's relevant to your situation and your narrative. You don't suck in every detail of what's around you, but you could. If you chose to be conscious of those license plates and to look at those license plate numbers as you're driving, you could remember them and you would be able to write them down or etc. and make note of it. But at the same time, you wouldn't have enough focus to also be able to look at all the different trees that are along the side of the road and then categorize and notice each type of species of trees as you drove by as well. It would be too much to handle. But your brain is seeing all that, and you are processing all that information in your subconscious mind. It's just your focus is not filtering for it because you can't handle all that. And then you can take this even further. While you were sitting in your seat right now and I was having this conversation, you probably didn't notice the sensation of the back of the chair or whatever, or where you're sitting, pressing against your body because you were thinking about what I was saying and you were paying attention to what it is this conversation is about. And then also, you may have not noticed, the temperature of the room while you were sitting there and listening to this because, well, you were thinking about me talking and then you're thinking about the back of the chair or whatever you're sitting on. your mind becomes highly focused. And so it's funny. We are both living in the past in our minds in many ways, and we are only focusing on certain aspects of the past, where we have almost an infinite universe of things to pay attention to with our five senses. But we select based off of what we think is valuable to pay attention to. Now, this segues us into another whole area where we then have to start understanding, okay, so that being said, we're in our own little universe and we're paying attention to what we want when we have the possibility of paying attention to so many other things. Why do we choose what to pay attention to and how? Now that is starting to become interesting. We largely come out of the box when we're born with certain preset interests, things that are important to us, right? Things that we focus on. And our brains aren't fully developed from that age, but initially, very basic things are interesting to us. Um, Food, warmth, our emotions that are going through us, lights, loud sounds, any form of danger, things like that. And as we get older, we begin developing broader interests because we go from, if you notice, babies are hyper emotional about specific things, that small category of stuff, because they're putting all of their focus on those few things. And their emotional regulation is way out of the charts on things. Like if a grown adult reacted to things as a baby did, it would be insane. That's just, they don't have as broad of a filtering system or selecting system. But as you get older, you spread it out a bit, and then as you become more sophisticated and all this stuff, you begin to get that wonderment and like that curiosity, and that's where you're exploring out all of the different things that potentially have value. That's why kids are curious. Is their reticular activation system is trying to figure out, what should I place value on? What should I try to find that has value? And what should I put my attention on? Because your attention is a currency. It's a resource. You can only spend so much of on at a time on a thing for so long and still balance out the things that you found to be the most valuable. So we begin as we get older, and after we get past that curiosity stage and all this stuff, we begin to be conditioned. Now, I don't want to be like some conspiracy theorist guy or something, or make this about some hippie who, is against the man and, being, brainwashed and all this stuff. But there's a lot of truths to that, in that naturally, it doesn't necessarily have to be some conspiracy. You are conditioned by your environment and your social group. Now, how your social group is conditioned, that's another topic. But as you're conditioned, right, and your value system begins to be adjusted by both your environment and your peers, you end up shaping your reticular activation system based off the collective consciousness that you interact with. All right, this is what's called tribalism, or where things like cognitive dissonance begin forming. So as you go on, you begin to realize that your attention and focus, shaped by your peers because they want to survive and you need them to survive, gets really honed in on certain things that you think are important, and your mind begins to copy the environment around it, make its own sketch on the things that the other people are telling you to make a sketch of, right? Now, this is where we've gone from baby to child. Now we're starting to get into kind of like, a little past 6, 7 year olds to 8, 9, 10, where they begin forming a social identity where they are a part of a group. And this is usually mostly where humans start to have ideas of religion, ideas of politics of the tribe that they're in, the culture specifically, nationalism imprinted on them strongly, right? Because they are now looking to others as a shortcut to figure out what is value, right? We're trying to really paint a picture of what's value in relation to our survival. So now people often, this is when they become a little closed off. A lot of religions talk about the age of 7 is very important. They say, man, there was a priest, a Jesuit priest, who said something to the effect of, if you can give me your child till the age they turn 7, I will have them the rest of their life. That sounds a little dark. I don't know. But I mean, the point he was trying to make is that if you teach children at a young age certain things and it gets imprinted in them, it'll be there forever. Just like ducklings. This is a famous study is you have like baby ducklings. If and when they hatch, they immediately, when they come out of their eggshells, see the mother duckling. And as soon as they see a mother duckling, they do what's called imprinting. That first duck that they see, they assume is their mother and will always follow that one as their mother, like zombies, or like they just, it's automatic. And they've done studies where they take other ducks that are not their mother, but the ducklings see them as soon as they hatch, and they immediately assume that that is their mother. And they do it with other animals, and they even do it with humans. They will assume a human is their mother if they see it when they hatch. So anyway, we have these same traits. We imprint onto the group that we are born into, and our minds will tell us to focus on the things that are important to that groupthink, I guess. I mean, you know. So with that all being said, if you're in your search for truth and you take just these couple things that I take into perspective, you must start to realize very quickly that this is a minefield of, pitfalls and mistakes that could happen, and just fear where you may not even want to learn the truth. You may just have all these obstacles that stop you from really learning it. Because one, the truth that is real, and if you're living in the past and looking back, it's hard to know what the present truth is and the future truth is. All you can do is extrapolate out from the past what the future will be. And you can't assume that it's always going to stay in that static state. You also have to take a look at your focus, right? What you are looking at. So when you are trying to look for truth, you need to cast a wide net. You need to be open to ideas. You need to be able to take in whatever is out there. And you need to, obviously, don't waste your time on things that are less likely at first. Maybe look at the things that seem like they're more plausible first, but you don't want to just make a decision on a religion, a scientific idea, or an observation just based off of one experience or one story that you've heard. You need to take in the whole picture and then draw conclusions from that, because your mind will try to feed you the information that you are telling it to, that you have a bias towards. And then also on top of it, you're going to have a lot of tribal pressure to not find truth. You are more interested in your survival stages, being young and having to depend on others and appeasing other people, because you want to live and you want to get food. You want people to take care of you. So you're very sensitive at those stages too, and it will stick with you all of your life. Jung talked about an inner child, how there's different levels of your psyche, right, that develop through time. You have, your inner child, younger self, your darker side, the hero, all of these people that are within you. That's a whole nother topic. A lot of people don't agree with Jung. But from your childhood, those core beliefs are very hard to shake. They're imprinted in your subconscious, below your verbal understanding. And because of that, those are the things that you really need to push yourself the hardest on to see another perspective. For example, I was born a Southern Baptist, extremely conservative. I was homeschooled, cut off from the rest of the world, which in a lot of ways was good. And I had very strong conviction on many things. I have had to, in my search for truth, force myself to go out and try to understand other people's perspectives and try to learn what other people see, right? And I have to say that both sides are wrong. No one ideology is 100% correct. No one group, whether you're conservative, you're liberal, you're a Christian, you're a Buddhist, whatever, right? They all have their own observations that they are drawing from a source of truth and giving it their own spin based off their own biases, etc. You have to do that as well when you are going out and seeking truth. And you have to be patient, very patient, because it takes a lot of time. And something I've learned over in my life is that true geniuses, people who are highly intelligent, does not just come as a gift that they don't work for. Now, there's arguments about IQ, that IQ cannot be increased and that your intelligence level is what it is. But here's the thing. They say a gifted man who does not work will always be beaten or outpaced by an ungifted man who will put in the work. And we're very fortunate in this time that we are in now to have a mountain of people before us who have done study research and piled up information. Sir Isaac Newton famously said, I am not a great man, but I stand on the shoulders of great men before me. I have noticed that even if someone is a genius or has a high IQ, it doesn't necessarily matter that they're so smart if they haven't done the work. You have to do the work of learning and educating yourself. You have to go out and you have to read a wide base of information, all the disciplines. I'm not saying I'm an expert on any discipline. I'm not saying that I'm necessarily even proficient in most disciplines, but I have definitely taken a lot of time to have a liberal education, as they used to call it, in all fields, right? Psychology, mathematics, history, science, literature, whatever, religion, you name it. And it makes you sharp in a way that no one else is. It's a very expensive way to educate, but it's very synergistic and it's very well-rounding. That gives you a lot more humble perspectives on reality. So that's really the key takeaway that I'm trying to get at with studying your own mind to find truth, is your mind is not interested in understanding truth so much. It's interested in survival. And you have to fight against it in many ways or harness it, because really at the end of the day, your subconscious will and can overwhelm your conscious mind. It is the more powerful beast of your brain. It's like a horse. You have to guide it and you have to put blinders on it and you have to feed it. You have to take care of it or else it'll rebel against you and do what it wants to do in its moments. So that all being said, take time to learn how your mind works. This is like I'm already over 30 minutes on this video and I'm trying to jam pack information in here for you. I'm barely touching the tip of the iceberg, but this stuff is very powerful, understanding your own mind. It's one of the most important studies I've found in my life, is understanding your own mind lets you understand so many things in life, other people, how the world works, who you are, what this all is. That's an area I would, if anyone is interested in becoming wise and learning, is to take the time to study psychology, your own mind, and how people think. So with that, I think I've made myself very clear, and that's a good video for today. Well, with that, please like, subscribe, share the video if you don't mind, and drop a comment when we talk about this. Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.